In my presentation today, I looked at two areas of policy that I believe are emerging as significant when trying to understand the UK's future relationship with the European electricity market. The first of these is the widening of the scope since the electricity market was first mentioned in an official government statement in relation to Northern Ireland. And the second is the clear smudging of UK red lines that initially ruled out the need to comply with European regulations or accept any jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. But first I highlighted the value of GB participation in the European Union electricity market by pointing out how growing cross-border market activity is increasing price convergence in Europe and helping to reduce peak prices. In fact, National Grid, who operate the market in GB, have calculated that completion of the existing planned interconnection with mainland Europe would be worth up to £1 billion a year to GB consumers. But does UK government policy on Brexit recognise the value of this market? Well, I believe the evidence suggests that this is now being recognised for the UK as a whole, even though initially it may only have been considered a Northern Ireland issue because of the border's significance to Brexit and the nature of the single electricity market as an important cross-border institution. The government's August 2017 position paper in Northern Ireland set out the UK's proposal, saying that the UK and the European Union should prioritise discussion of energy issues alongside the movement of people and goods, and facilitate the continuation of a single electricity market covering Northern Ireland and Ireland. However, Theresa May's Mansion House speech on the 2nd of March 2018 explicitly expanded the scope of this aspiration for continued European electricity market participation by saying that there are many other areas where the UK and EU economies are closely linked, including energy. On energy, we will want to secure broad energy cooperation with the EU. This includes protecting the single electricity market across Ireland and Northern Ireland and exploring options for the UK's continued participation in the EU's internal energy market. So it's clear that the UK government aspiration is now for both Great Britain and Northern Ireland to remain within the European energy market after Brexit. But what options are there for continued participation? In an earlier presentation in this series, I looked at this issue in relation to Northern Ireland. My conclusion was, and remains, that precedent indicates future electricity market participation will require retention of at least some European law and ECJ governance. My last point today was that there is evidence that former red lines in the area of governance by European institutions are now being interpreted more flexibly. The requirement for ongoing EU jurisdiction in return for market participation was confirmed in the EU's February draft withdrawal agreement that stated, "The provisions of Union law governing wholesale electricity markets listed in Annex 2.7 to this protocol shall apply to and in the United Kingdom in respect of Northern Ireland." Even though this annex currently lacks content, the requirement to accept EU jurisdiction in return for market participation is now explicit. In December 2017, the UK government signed up to the joint progress report that, in relation to Northern Ireland, promised that in the absence of agreed solutions, the United Kingdom will maintain full alignment with those rules of the internal market and the customs union which now or in the future support North-South cooperation and the all-island economy. Perhaps surprisingly, this report also stated that the United Kingdom will ensure that no new regulatory barriers develop between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. Although this reflected the commitment for no border down the Irish Sea, it was not entirely compatible with previous red lines and sovereignty. So it's clear from the progress report that the UK government has already rowed back from outright rejection of any European jurisdiction following Brexit, and May's Mansion House speech in March must be understood in that context. But it also follows the draft withdrawal agreement's claim of jurisdiction in return for market participation. Another internal EU discussion document on regulatory issues in relation to free trade agreements was published by the EU Brexit Task Force on 21st February. Although not intended to address energy issues, this document is of general relevance to understanding the EU's perspective on the governance of trading relationships, suggesting that access to the single market must be commensurate with the risk that such access poses to the relevant area of the level playing field, in this case energy. Union decision-making autonomy and oversight by the European Court of Justice are always fully preserved. In summary then, Against the backdrop of an EU that is developing a strong position on governance of a future trading relationship with the UK post-Brexit, the UK government has expanded the scope of energy market participation to which it aspires to include the whole of the UK. In so doing, there is clearly tacit acceptance that former red lines have now faded and that there will be regulatory and jurisdictional implications for the United Kingdom as a whole.